Alex Steeves has been signed to a well-deserved 2-year contract extension, but don't count Don Sweeney out from flipping the forward prior to the trade deadline exactly because of that contract security.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we are now the #1 podcast network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various major outlets for nearly 20 years. Today is Thursday, January 22nd, and on today's podcast, we are going to discuss some Bruins roster news and notes. Alex Steeves signing a 2-year contract extension, Kolyachonok being lost on waivers, as well as some emerging rumors involving the St. Louis Blues. We'll also take a look at the Bruins barometer, where we are with this team right now in terms of buying, selling, holding, and we will preview tonight's big game coming up against the Vegas Golden Knights. All right, let's just dive right into it. Yesterday, it was announced that Alex Steeves has been signed to a 2-year contract extension. And what a story Steeves has been for the Boston Bruins this season. He was signed over the summer as a free agent, as he was not retained by the organization that had developed him for several years, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Thankfully, this is much to Steve Dangle's chagrin. And on Wednesday, Steeves signed a 2-year extension with the Bruins with a contract that will carry a cap hit of $1.625 million through the 2027-28 NHL season. Steeves was recalled earlier this season amid some injuries. He has played in 33 games, 8 goals, 6 assists for 14 points with a +5 rating. He has been up and down the lineup, and that's part of the reason why the Bruins really like him. He can play any line. He's played on the top line alongside Elias Lindholm and David Pastrnak. That is a spot that's currently occupied by Marat Husnudinov. Steeves is currently playing on the third line with Fraser Minton and Morgan Geekie, who finally scored the other night after a month-long goal drought. Steeves and Minton, of course, former Toronto Marlies, so it's even sweeter to see both of those guys playing well together. He has played really on all 4 forward lines, some power play time, some penalty killing time, and in fact, he's got a power play goal and one of Boston's 2 shorthanded goals so far this season. He's also throwing the hits around, 117 in 33 games, leading the Bruins in hits per 60. And, he's 4th on the team in total hits, but significantly lower ice time than guys ranked in front of him like Zadorov, McAvoy, etc. He had been signed to a 1-year, $850,000 contract for this season. And he made his Bruins debut on November 8th against Toronto, and he scored a goal on November 11th against his old team. He did start the season in Providence, where he had 8 points in 9 games before being called up, spent a large chunk of his pro career in the AHL with the Toronto Marlies, and in fact, he holds the Marlies franchise record for most goals and points. So, a very astute move by Don Sweeney to not only scoop Steeves from the Toronto Maple Leafs, he also, of course, in tandem with that, signed Matej Blumel from the Dallas Stars organization, trying to see if they could find a bit of lightning in a bottle here with these 2 top scorers from the AHL last season. Blumel didn't look great in his time with the Bruins. Steeves has claimed a spot, and he's earned himself twice the salary and twice the contract term moving forward as a result of his strong play so far for the Boston Bruins. Now, this does not discount the possibility that he could be moved. We know that NHL GMs really embrace certainty, and you could take a gamble on Steeves in a trade, but it's even better if you're getting him cheap this season and then you know what you'll be having to pay him over the next couple of seasons. Not to say the Bruins don't value him and see him as a potentially long-term fit, or at least a short-term fit over the next couple of seasons, but there's also that possibility that he could be flipped prior to the trade deadline. For now, he's rocking that third line spot. He's killing some penalties, and he's become a valuable member of the Boston Bruins as they kind of retool here on the fly. In other roster news yesterday, Vladislav Kolyachonok, we hardly knew ye. He was placed on waivers on Tuesday. If he had cleared, he would have reported to Providence, but the Dallas Stars swooped in and reclaimed the Belarusian defenseman. It's 1 month, 5 days after the Bruins scooped Kolyachonok off waivers from Dallas. He played in 2 games, 2 shots, no points. And at that time, the Bruins were facing some big hurdles in terms of offensive depth. Lindholm has been in and out of the lineup. Charlie McAvoy was injured at the time, Jordan Harris, among others. And the Bruins were looking for some depth pieces. Now, Lindholm's back, McAvoy's back, Andrew Peeke healthy, Jordan Harris on the verge of coming back as well. And in fact, Billy Sweezy, who had been recalled to make, or because Henry Jokiharju was also away tending to a family matter, he was sent back to Providence, signaling Hampus Lindholm's health. Henry Jokiharju returning to Boston after tending to that issue, and Jordan Harris perhaps also being ready to step back into the lineup. So the Bruins relatively healthy now on the blue line. Had to try to squeeze Kolyachonok down to the AHL. He was scooped up, and the Bruins now have some decisions to make as to who will play with some healthy options. Peeke, Jokiharju, McAvoy, Lindholm, Zadorov, Lohrei, and then, of course, Jordan Harris waiting in the wings. So we'll see here. And Jonathan Aspero, of course, being now a mainstay on the blue line. All this comes with just about 5-6 weeks prior to the trade deadline. There will be a freeze during the Olympic break as well. And there's rumblings out there, rumors that the Bruins are in talks with the St. Louis Blues. Now, General Manager Don Sweeney, Blues General Manager Doug Armstrong are part of the Team Canada brain trust. So obviously they've been talking a bit, but there's some rumblings or maybe just hopeful putting it out there into the universe that maybe the Bruins are discussing a guy like Robert Thomas, who for some reason could be made available by the St. Louis Blues. If that is indeed the case, he would be a guy that the Bruins very much should go after. He is only 26 years old, 20th overall pick in 2017. And this guy can, be like a point per game player, a top line center, and a guy that the Bruins really should pursue. On The Athletic, Shayna Goldman, Jeremy Rutherford wrote, "What would a Robert Thomas trade look like for the Blues?" Obviously, the cost would be pretty high. And they are saying the Blues would be looking for, first round picks, high end prospects. So at the very least, you're looking at James Higgins and probably at least another future first round pick, perhaps more pieces as well, like a Matt Poitras or something like that. So the cost would be very high, but could be well worth it for the Boston Bruins, who still are in need of a top line center. James Higgins projects to be that guy, but if they can get a 26-year-old who's well in his prime and who can complement the core, they would have to move some money out because he's making like 8.5 something. But maybe the Bruins can get creative and look to add a guy like Robert Thomas. We'll keep an eye on that. Just something that's going on right now. But the bigger news for the Bruins, Steeves signs, Kolyachonok lost on waivers. And coming up, before we preview tonight's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, we'll just briefly touch on the Bruins barometer and whether or not we are currently buying, selling, or holding with respect to this roster. There is absolutely nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, unmatched. Watching at home is pretty cool, but being in the building is a completely different animal. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets, long queues, endless screens, prices that change at checkout. And that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans like you. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I love the view from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the arena. And there are no surprise fees at checkout with their upfront fees. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. Thank you for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And you can get even more involved in the Locked On Bruins community by signing up for the Everydayer Club. If you're listening every day or even a few times a week, this Everydayer Club is built for you. You'll get ad-free episodes delivered right to your podcast feeds, and you'll get an invite to the Locked On Discord server, which includes a Locked On Bruins channel where we can keep the conversation going and, get to know each other even better. Please do check out lockedonbruins.supercast.com to learn more. And please do consider joining the Locked On Bruins Everydayer Club. On Thursdays, we like to do the Bruins barometer, which is a look at where the Bruins currently stand in relation to the competition and whether or not they should be buying, selling, holding, and whether we as fans should be in or kind of not, basically. Heading into tonight's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, the Bruins continue to occupy the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference with 32 games remaining on the schedule. And if you line the Eastern Conference teams up by point percentage, the Bruins are indeed still in 8th. They have a .580 point percentage, so 58 points in 50 games. That means there's been 100 points available so far this season. They've accumulated 58. If you look at the New York Islanders, they are at 59% because they have 59 points in 50 games. The Maple Leafs behind the Bruins at .570. They've got 57 points through 50 games. So you can see how the Bruins well in the mix here. And if you look at the Eastern teams by goal differential, the Bruins did lose 6-2 the other night to the Dallas Stars, but their goal differential still a healthy +10, which puts them with the Buffalo Sabres and the Washington Capitals for the 4th highest goal differential in the Eastern Conference. The Bruins much better at home than they have been on the road. And they've got a couple games coming up against Vegas, Montreal at home, which will be a couple big ones. They also are 8-2 over their past 10 games, which is pretty much the second hottest team in the Eastern Conference behind the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are 9-0-1, Carolina Hurricanes 7-2-1, Buffalo Sabres 6-3-1. And so the Bruins right now are in a unique spot, right? They're retooling. They are looking to the future and looking to add better, younger pieces around their core of David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, Jeremy Swayman. They also have a secondary core of Elias Lindholm, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Morgan Geekie. And then there's some decisions to be made as to whether they're going to commit to some of those other secondary pieces long-term, namely Casey Middlestat and Pavel Zacha, both of whom are younger than David Pastrnak and have a lot to contribute. They've been playing very well as of late, with Victor Arvidsson, who in my mind is a clear flip candidate heading towards the trade deadline. You don't want to hold on to him and lose him for nothing. You could also flip him to get picks, prospects from a legit Stanley Cup contender, bring one of the younger guys up to see how they fare in that spot, whether it be Fabian Lysell or Matt Patra, if you want to put him on the wing, or, you flip Arvidsson and then bring in someone to play that right side. Same with Andrew Peeke, who's a pending unrestricted free agent. So the Bruins are in a unique spot, like I said, where they have some pieces that they can move out for picks, prospects, futures, but they also have picks, prospects, futures that they could use to improve themselves long-term as well. I mentioned in the Robert Thomas discussion that it would likely involve a guy like James Higgins. Would you be willing to trade him in a package that would bring you a 26-year-old top line center right in his prime? Maybe. The Bruins were apparently willing to move a 2027 first-round pick in a Rasmus Andersson trade that would go a long way towards shoring up the right side defense, which is a huge area of need. Was that out of line? I don't think so, especially if it was going to come with a contract extension. I wouldn't have been okay with them trading a 2026 first-round pick, but if they improve the right side of the defense, they could be even better next season. And so that pick hopefully will be a low first-round pick, or, closer to 32nd than first. The Bruins' two biggest areas of need are right side defense. It's very thin after Charlie McAvoy. You got Henry Jokiharju, Andrew Peeke, Jordan Harris, who can play both sides, Mason Lohrei. And the second line right wing spot is, as well as Victor Arvidsson has played, that is an area where the Bruins can look to improve as well. Arvidsson, 32, one of the oldest players on the team, and not a long-term solution there. So you could conceivably move those two guys out and then take from the other side, the future side, and bring somebody in who can fill those spots. A scoring winger, or a top line center, or a puck moving top four defenseman that can play the right side. So right now, I'm still in a bit of hold mode with this team, and I think they can go both ways, selling, buying, all with the view to improving this team and making their long-term prospects look even better. You have a pretty good core in Swayman, McAvoy, Pastrnak, maybe not the highest end core pieces around the NHL. Of course, teams like Colorado have Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Martin Necas, or the Edmonton Oilers have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard. In the East, you look at the Lightning, they've got Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman when he's healthy, Andrei Vasilevsky. Those are core pieces that are higher level, higher ceilings than the Bruins. But if you can improve your floor and raise the level of the talent on the team around them, you've already committed to the Lindholms long-term, Zadorov, Morgan Geekie. You have depth pieces that you're building around in Tanner Jeannot. Not building around, but are coming in to act as that putty between the bricks. Tanner Jeannot, Steeves is signed. Fraser Minten looks like a long-term piece, which perhaps makes Fraser Minten expendable, or sorry, Matt Poitras expendable. The heavy lifting, a lot of the heavy lifting was done last season when they moved out Coyle, Carlo, Marchand, Frederick, Brazeau. There's an opportunity to replicate that with Peeke and also Arvidsson. Steeves was one of your unrestricted free agents. You've locked him up, but also could flip him if there's a team out there that swoops in looking for scoring that's willing to cough something up for him. So right now, I'm kind of in hold mode, but the Bruins will be a very interesting team moving forward. They have an opportunity to make the playoffs. They have an opportunity to continue the retool by adding some younger pieces. And it's a very interesting time for Don Sweeney, Cam Neely, and the management team because of how well Marco Sturm is coaching this club right now and getting the most out of this group as currently built, which is not as optimized as we would like. You need that scoring winger on the right side. You need that top line center for sure. You need more stability on the right side. These are all areas where the Bruins could look to add. Got a big test coming up tonight against the Vegas Golden Knights, and we'll preview that game here as the podcast continues. Bruins Golden Knights tonight at TD Garden, and of course, this is a game that has a bit extra oomph to it, thanks to Bruce Cassidy, now coaching the Vegas Golden Knights for a few years, former Boston Bruins head coach. You have Jack Eichel, who's got history in Boston, and the latest wrinkle, which is the Rasmus Andersson trade. The Bruins were well in on him, but Vegas swooped in, plucked him off the trade market from the Calgary Flames, with the Bruins not being able to really work out in an extension, and therefore they weren't looking to add him without that certainty moving forward, which I fully respect. I could see them going for him if they were going to have him long-term. You're more willing to give up a Lori and a pick for a guy who's going to be part of the solution. He wasn't willing to sign an extension, so they went in a different direction. And Andersson is now a member of the Golden Knights, who come in tonight 7-2-1 over their past 10 games. They lost to Philly the other day, but prior to that, they had won 7 in a row, including 3 overtime wins against some okay teams, not really opposition that blows you away. Winnipeg, Columbus, St. Louis, San Jose, the Kings, the Leafs, and the Predators all on that. And maybe one of those teams is in a playoff spot right now. So they're looking all right, but the Bruins have an opportunity here to, face off against a pretty good team. Jack Eichel with 11 points over his past 5 games, including 8 assists. Pavel Dorofeyev with 4 goals. He's a guy to really watch out for. I've got him on one of my fantasy teams and love what he brings to the table for sure. For the Bruins, Pastrnak leading the way with 5 points over his past 5 games, 4 assists. Victor Arvidsson actually leading the way goals-wise for the Bruins with 3 in the past 5 games. Second meeting between these two teams, Vegas won 6-5 in Vegas back on October 16th. They do have a goaltending trio at the moment of Akira Schmid, Carter Hart, and Aiden Hill, none of whom have really great numbers. Schmid leads the way with an .897 save percentage. Carter Hart, I believe he's injured right now anyways. He's got .871. Hill at .873. So they're very vulnerable kind of defensively, although they're only 13th in goals allowed per game at 2.96. Vegas is 6th in goals for per game at 3.33. The Bruins, 9th in goals for 3.28. 19th in goals allowed at 3.1. That number went up again after that 6-2 loss. Both these teams very good on the power play. Vegas is fourth best power play, 26.5%. The Bruins are 25.5%. The key will be, of course, staying out of the penalty box and not replicating what we saw the other night where the Bruins took a couple first period penalties. Dallas scored 2 power play goals, and then that was pretty much all they needed to pull off that win. Vegas is led in scoring by Eichel, 57 points, 41 games. Of course, Mitch Marner in the mix with 51 points in 48 games. Mark Stone with 48 points in 32 games. Thomas Hertl, Pavel Dorofeyev, Ivan Barbashev. Like, the list goes on in terms of the talent on this team. Riley Smith, former Bruin, kicking around as well. On the blue line, Shea Theodore leads the way for this team. The Bruins, 8-2 over their past 10. They've beaten teams like Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, the Rangers, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Seattle, Chicago. They lost the last game, of course, to Dallas, and will be looking to get back home and feed off the TD Garden crowd in order to get back on a winning note here. William Karlsson scored 2 goals in the previous game. That was one in which the Bruins were up 1-0, then 2-1, but then allowed Vegas to kind of run away with it. They scored a couple goals in the third to make it interesting, but were not able to come all the way back. The goalies in that one were, I'm trying to remember here, Jeremy Swayman allowed 6 goals on 37 shots in that one for the Bruins, while it was Schmid who allowed 5 goals on 24 shots. So not great goaltending from either side in that one. The Bruins had been riding a pretty high goaltending save percentage here in 2026. Came back down to earth a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Joonas Korpisalo in net to give Swayman a break after the other night where he was peppered by the Dallas Stars. And again, hopefully the Bruins can get back on a winning note here with a massive game against Montreal coming up on Saturday. That's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. Tomorrow we'll come back to recap whatever happens tonight against Vegas, bring you all the latest on the black and gold, and also preview that huge match coming up on Saturday against the Montreal Canadiens. Just checking X here and seeing Bruins lines at morning skate. Not much changing. Yoki Haru is back with the team after tending to that family matter. The pairings pretty much the same. Aspero, McAvoy, Lindholm, Lohrei, Zadorov, Peeke, with Husnudinov remaining on the top line with Lindholm, Pastrnak, Middlestat, Zaka, Arvidsson. Third line, the new contract man, Steeves with Minton and Geeky, and then the fourth line of Jeannot, Kiraly, Kostelic, with Asimont acting as the extra forward. He, too, could be a guy who could be on the move. So he's put up some decent numbers when he's been in the lineup. An energy guy, but not quite cutting it right now in terms of being able to crack the lineup. We could see Bell Fraser is noting that Swayman is in the starter's net, so maybe they go back to him as well. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for taking time to listen. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not done so already. Also, please consider joining the Everydayer Club. Love to chat with all of you over there. Someone in the Locked On Bruins channel the other day posted these amazing mock-up jerseys that they've put together after each win. So that's cool in there. Really loved seeing that. And we can keep the conversation going with some more fun stuff. LockedOnBruins.supercast.com to get in on that. Check out the Locked On 24/7 national YouTube channel next. Don't forget to listen to NHL Game Night so you get all the latest from around the league, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.